I am Optimus Prime.
And I am John. Hey, everybody, this is John and Pat. We're emergency managers with Movie AAR. That's a movie after action review. We have a lot of fun looking at movies and specifically movie scenes, talking about the disasters that happen in them and what we would do as emergency managers. But let's jump into Transformers right now when the Transformers, specifically the Autobots, come to Earth. Patrick, tell us what's happening in the scene.
They fly right overhead of the Griffith Observatory of our two main characters, Sam and Michaela, in which Sam is just frightened and holding closer to Michaela. She's not scared at all, by the way. It lands in a field, and that's the first one. That's the first Autobot that lands. There's a stadium that gets crashed through by one of the Autobots. Basically, one of the meteors goes straight through a stadium. And then another one goes through a city. And another one lands in a pool.
Yeah, so let's talk about real fast the implication of 4 large meteorites, or what appear to be meteorites, heading to the Earth. And it appears that no one knows about it. There's no intel on it. NASA isn't tracking it. All the satellites that we have up in the air, the space station, nobody's like, oh, hey, by the way, these giant 4 objects are coming to the Earth, and they're all going to land right around LA. Huge population there. And, there's essentially no situational awareness on that.
This is Secretary of Defense. I am so underdressed.
This happened just above the Griffith Observatory where, the Hollywood sign is. If this is around the time of year that you have the Santa Ana winds and there's 50 to 70 mile per hour winds and something that was just a flaming ball of fire lands, you may have a big fire up there. So if a meteor hits during that time of the year in Southern California, you can bet that people are going to be going up there and assessing what's going on, especially if it starts a massive fire.
I believe that Optimus Prime looked at the weather reports before they said, "Okay, we're gonna hit the planet at this time." So
that sounds like something he'd do.
Yeah. Oh, no winds today, so we're gonna land. This is gonna be the day that we land. It makes me think of the meteorite that exploded over, was it Russia a couple years ago? It was during the day, and just the beam of light, and everybody's freaking out. And yet, again, at night, no big deal. Just we're going to quietly land on this planet by hurling ourselves at this planet.
Yeah, the Russia one was so bright that it made the night sky look like daytime.
The first thing that something ever bright came out of Russia.
Jeez.
Zing. Okay, so let's break down what's real, what's fake about each of the different scenarios here. So I'm going to hit the one that lands in the field. For me, that's probably the most realistic, also the easiest one to attack because, hey, it lands in a field, not a lot of people around it. That's probably safe. Not a big deal for an emergency manager. But you're going to have people that want to check out that site again because they're going to see that come in. And so how do you quarantine off that area if, there is debris or if that material is valuable? So that one's super easy. So we can just check that one off the list real fast. But the other ones definitely have some more implications. Patrick, which one is the one that kind of stood out to you that you were like, okay, that's a big deal for me?
I would say the one in the city. And one that commonality among all 4 of them was
commonality.
Yeah, one commonality.
Meteorality. One common.
Stop. One commonality among all of them is the impact that they made. It was a relatively small impact, unless they slowed themselves down before they hit. But if they just went ahead and hit the Earth, tiny impact, not even a crater, mostly just a hole, something that kind of looked like it was dragged on the ground. But the one in the city does simulate maybe like a shockwave of some kind or just a really harsh impact into the ground. So it knocks out the windows at the cafe that the kids are at. It flips over a car. But then they go out to look at it and it created kind of just a big hole in the ground. And by big hole, I mean maybe like a 10-foot wide hole, which if a meteor moving that quick would maybe knock out, it'd be much bigger. It'd be much, much larger.
Yeah, that one was hilarious to me because I kept on thinking of these meteorites hitting the Earth and making like virtually no impact. But it shows that they might have tried to slow down, but they didn't because of the shockwave, right? So we know that they didn't slow down. And also the impact to the stadium shows that just barreling through everything. And so I'm going to give it basically a 1 out of 10 for realistic of the impact to Earth on all of these, actually. So that's pretty unrealistic.
I would agree. Yeah, big time unrealistic. And the people did run outside to check out what happened. By the time that the kids and the townspeople had run outside of the places that they were just living life in when the meteor hit, the first responders were already out there.
What is that?
Yeah.
Yet when one hit a pool in somebody's backyard in Southern California, it just displaced the water. It didn't destroy the pool. It didn't destroy the backyard. There were no police out there.
I like how the little girl in that scene, she's like, she thinks it's the Tooth Fairy and she's all excited.
Excuse me, are you the Tooth Fairy?
I have a 3-year-old son, and I'm like 100% confident that if he thought the Tooth Fairy was coming, he saw a bright light outside of his window, he'd be all over it. But I was pretty concerned that that little girl in the movie was just able to get outside, like no big deal. Like, where are your parents there? They were like surprised that she was outside, but they didn't notice, like, the Autobot, the giant creature, just standing right next to their daughter. There's some concerns there about parenting, in that one for sure.
Yeah. But we won't go into the parenting here.
No, we're not.
No, not for us to judge here. However,
well, I am judging straight up.
Well, you're a father,
Yeah. Well, living the dad life. That's why I can't have the glorious beard like you. That's definitely a no dad beard. And the reason why I know that is because if you have little kids, when it gets too long, they start pulling at it, and it's really cute. But then you're like, yeah, there's real pain there. Okay, so the last one, the one that's kind of most, I wouldn't say most intriguing, but it hits the stadium, and Patrick and I think it could be the Dodger Stadium because it's LA. So if it's hitting the Dodger Stadium, all the lights are on, it's at night, doesn't appear that anybody, thankfully, is in the crowd, but there's people there, right? There's people there because the lights are on, and it causes a ton of damage to not just the stadium, the physical property, but also the actual grounds of where they'd be playing. So no games there for a while. I mean, they would have to shut that stadium down for assessments, and like the field alone, all that damage to the field, they would have, like, they couldn't play games there. So you're talking about major economic impact to the city, for all those assessments, especially if they saw these giant footprints walk away from it.
And and that's what I was going to say. What was concerning was nobody in the town or nobody was like, oh, well, there's a hole here, but there's nothing in it. There's nothing in this hole.
Oh, that's weird. The hole is just there.
That's weird.
It must have just blew up in the
flipped over
atmosphere.
cars. It flipped over cars and it blew out windows. But holes happen, John. Holes happen.
Right pocket! My back pocket!
You got 10 back pockets!
Left cheek! Left cheek! Left cheek!
I mean, sinkholes. What about the insurance claim on that? Hey, I swear my car was hit by a meteorite. Okay, cool. Can you show me a picture? Well, there's literally nothing there.
Oh, dude, I hope this guy's got asteroid insurance because he is so bold.
So you're going to have a lot of people who are very unhappy. And especially if it hits a part of the town, or if it hits a major stadium and there's, like I said, economic impacts, then you're going to want people to have answers, right?
Even if it did rock the earth, people in Southern California would probably just think it was an earthquake. However, if they felt significant shaking, that would cause concern for local emergency managers. They would be calling different people to find out, hey, was that an earthquake? Did you guys feel that? Was it, were we on the furthest edge of it? And was it actually more intense shaking some distance from here?
Well, There's a scene in the movie where Sam's dad does what's right, by the way, and when he thinks it's an earthquake, he like beelines it for his kitchen table, and he's under his kitchen table. At least he did what he thought was right. Earthquake country for sure. So overall, with the 4 meteorites slash Autobots hitting the Earth, we kind of gave it a 1 out of 10 for looking at the impact, the actual impact. But in terms of how people reacted to that, what rating would you give this scenario?
How people reacted?
Yeah, you had the first responders who were standing there with hoses and there was no fire. And you had like no situational awareness that the meteors were coming. And then people were just like standing around. So
The way that people responded, like the kid who grabbed his camcorder, not his phone at the time, it was 2007, but he grabbed his camcorder.
This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Explosions everywhere. This is easily 100 times cooler than Armageddon.
And he was recording everything he was doing as he was recording the scene. That's very realistic today. Anything sensational that happens, any disaster, anytime there's some crazy thing happening, people are whipping out their phones. They're taking pictures, they're taking videos, they're recording themselves. They want views, they want to post it online, they want to go viral. So I think that was realistic. People just running outside to see what happened. But I also think that they didn't show anyone injured either. So the fact that no one was injured and fire was out there like within 1 second of it hitting, and none of them were injured. It flipped over cars outside and it broke windows, but everyone was fine. And there was no medical in any of these shops kind of triaging people or anything like that, or medical evacuations. There was nothing like that happening. So
there's literally no triage whatsoever, no assessments being done. Okay, so
they had a movie to get to, they couldn't focus on these.
that's true. 3 out of 10.
I'd give it a 1. I'd give it also a 1 out of 10. Maybe realistic and human behavior was realistic, but nothing else was realistic.
Award-winning author Dr. Heather Beal creates books that explains and prepares children for emergencies. Movies about disaster are entertaining, living through disasters or not. Teaching children about these events is super important. So whether you need to talk about tornadoes, elephant wind, or earthquakes, tummy rumble quake, or fire drills, burnt toast, and snow cream cones, this amazing book series for small children by Train for Safety Press is worth reading. It's offered in multiple languages, and you can pick up a copy today by clicking on the link below. So we got 4 different scenarios here, but which one do you actually, if we were an emergency manager, if we were going to give just like one example of what an emergency manager would do in one of these scenarios, which one would you call out and what would you do?
With the city one, with any of them, that if they really made impacts and felt someone felt shaking, you would contact your boss or your field reps, probably your boss, get some find out if we get some situation awareness on whatever just happened. People reported seeing people on Twitter or wherever have reported or have shown videos of meteors flying through the sky. So trying to connect the dots on that and get field situation awareness to find out if any hazards were caused by this, like what the real threat is. So just trying to grab situation awareness, either from social media, from news, or from government officials or partners.
I ain't never seen this in my life. Need gunships on station ASAP.
Predator's coming up in a minute.
Linking the call to the nearest AWAC.
I know, man. If you seen this
Yeah, so my one thing is I would call out is the damage assessment process of what I would go through, life, property, and continuity of operations. And so after you have the immediate impact and okay, there was this impact in 4 different locations. Bumblebee landed somewhere too, by the way. We don't know when and how, but okay, so we've been impacted as a city or as a county. Let's see, are people injured? No, great. Was there property damage? Yes, lots of different locations apparently. Are the people who are vulnerable, were they impacted? And how can you make sure that systems continue? And so whether it's road damage, and so now you're working with DOT and working with all the different parties to move things around. There's lots of different areas that I would, again, situational awareness, those damage assessments, how is it impacting life, property, and continuity of operations? So great call out.
Right. Well, and that's just the consequences you're talking about. We haven't even touched on the threat identification.
What is that?
That they haven't even identified what the threat is. Was this a terrorist attack? They don't know. It happened in 4 different locations. Maybe it was a coordinated terrorist attack. We're not sure. That would be maybe the most plausible, that or a earthquake of some kind, or maybe, I mean, meteor hitting the earth, sure. But you got to consider all the possibilities at first. And I like what you said, just you're reacting to the consequences instead of the threat itself when you don't know what the threat is.
Yeah, we did this thing where I used to tell people that if I got called out to a disaster, I cared about the who, what, when, where, and how bad. I didn't care about the why, because that's investigative. And, there's a whole other arm that does investigations. But I knew I had a problem, and I was all about consequence management at that point. And I let the people who do investigations to tell me, hey, you're going to have a cascading effect because this was a terrorist attack, and they're still doing stuff.
Right.
So, yeah, really great call out. Okay, so we talked about what's real, what's fake. We kind of rated this scene. It's pretty bad for for an emergency management perspective. We gave you kind of a tip or two what we would do in this kind of situation, especially when there's like unknowns, the great unknown for the universe, if you will. And now we would like to give you a public service announcement. So, Patrick, how do we avoid stupid in a situation where a meteorite hits the Earth? That's kind of tough.
Yeah, I think maybe the way that you avoid stupid in this case is that you need to be ready to leave your home if there's more meteors headed this way. Maybe they're part of a larger meteor. They're just little rocks off of a larger meteor. Or you need to be ready to go for whatever reason. And I would just say, it'd be a good idea to have a go bag. How do you avoid stupid? You make sure that you have your duffel bag by the door or in the closet or in the garage or wherever it is with, some extra meds in it, medications, insurance cards, identification, and some clothes and some extra shoes of you and whoever else is in your family, or your pets. And so having that at the door and having that ready to go, I think that's the biggest thing I would call out there to avoid stupid.
Yeah, to avoid stupid, for me, I would say install like an app, like a weather app or an emergency notifications app on your phone that is more than just the basic one that comes with the phone. And so if there's an alert like, hey, there's meteorites heading to your town right now, get underground or, get out of this area, you can get those alerts. So that would be my one is NAS notifications for sure.
All right, people. Well, that's our show. Thanks for helping us review Transformers in our movie after action review. Make sure to check out the Readiness Lab, of which this show is on the network of, and we'll see you next week.
Live long and prosper.
Movie AAR.
Movie AAR.
Movie AAR.